welcome to our second chapter of Mrs. Clendenning and Mrs. Olnick's Adventures in Reading. What will your adventure be today? Last week we had Chapter 1, Main Ideas and Supporting Details. Today is Chapter 2, Making an Inference. If you remember, Chapter 1 was all about main ideas and supporting details. Today we're going to move into Chapter 2, Making an Inference. Before we make an inference, we need to talk about what an inference is. If you remember, we've talked about inferences before. When you make an inference, you need to read and gather information. Ask yourself questions. Take what you see, which is the evidence, combine it with what you know, which is your schema. We also use the math equation called text clues plus background knowledge equals an inference. These are some questions that you should be asking yourself when you are reading to help make an inference. You will find this and questions like this attached into your lesson plan sequence at the end of today's lessons. Let's get started and make an inference. We're going to go back to a book that we read in class called The Can Man. We're going to use the Can Man to help make inferences and think about what the text says and what do I know and what does it mean. If we stop and think about when we read in the beginning, when I read the words hard times and the picture showed the Can Man pushing a shopping cart, I thought that his life must be hard because it looked like he's pushing his only belongings around in the cart. That made me feel like everything he owns is right there. What a life that must be. I made an inference based on what I saw and what I knew. When I come down to the box here, it says, since the text says that Tim started at the opposite end of the street as the Can Man, I can infer he was trying to be deceitful and sneaky in order to beat the Can Man at collecting cans. He went the other way than the Can Man. That's very sneaky. The character, Tim, said, "This money is for you," and he gives the money he earns to the Can Man. It made me think that Tim began to realize that the Can Man needed a jacket more than he needed a skateboard. What a thought process that Tim went through in the book. As I was reading, I was taking what I read in the book, I put it together with what I knew, and I made an inference. This week in reading, you are going to be doing the same thing. You will find your own inference chart. You are going to answer 3 of the provided questions. Please make sure that you are using support evidence from the text to answer these questions. If you have any confusions, any questions, please go back into the text and look for evidence that will support these questions to help you find your answers. 5th grade, text clues plus background knowledge means inference.